Welcome in to the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 rated sportsbook app out there. I'm your host, Rudolph, joined by AJ Haefele. With the Avs still off, well, let's tackle the good news. No new players added to the COVID protocol lists as far as Colorado is concerned during this little break, so expectations are they'll be able to get back underway after this third postponed game. Should be back to normal as soon as Thursday. Sweet. Back to hockey, I guess, there. In the meantime, we're going to talk about other parts of hockey, at least tangentially related to the Avalanche and their prospects.
Before we start, yes, excited about the Mortal Kombat movie. Drew and I actually have talked about doing a little
watch along,
a little watch party for it. So maybe keep an eye out for that since we'll have some time.
Yeah, super early pod today because, sometimes
I have my second vaccine shot during our normal window.
Yeah, so, get a man vaccinated instead of doing the podcast on time. Definitely value there. The Avs, let me start here because I put this in the title. Do the Avs have the best defense in the NHL?
Yes.
Okay. So now that that's established.
Which version?
The healthy version.
Including Eric Johnson?
If you want, sure.
Hell yes, then. Hell yes.
So
without Eric Johnson, it's just a yes.
Just a normal yes?
Yeah.
So somewhere from yes to emphatic yes, the Avs have the best defense in the NHL. And there is an argument that it could get better.
You mean that better days are coming?
Indeed. When and how are very much up in the air. But
so right now, I would say that there are 4 realistic NHL prospects in their system
on
defense,
defensive side, yeah.
Let's consider Timmins still a prospect for the time being.
Sure,
he should be anyway. But Timmins at the top. And then I would have Justin Barron, and then I would have Drew Hellison, and then I would have Danila Zhravlov.
Agreed.
And then from there,
the mix of Klerman, Lieberman, whatever.
Yeah,
after that,
and we don't even talk about Josh Anderson anymore.
He's not. He's not an NHL caliber prospect. It's just reality. So,
yeah,
that is what it is on that front. But nonetheless. And you look at the 4 prospects, and they're all in very different situations, too. Timmins obviously on the cusp of breaking into the NHL in the right situation. We'll get to Barron in a second as he's the main focus of the show. But then you have Klerman, who earned his ELC this year, is already playing in the AHL. So
what have you thought of him so far?
He's been more or less what I expected. I'll put it this way: my bar is very, very low for him in his first handful of AHL games, and it's fine, right? Like I think we're seeing some of the same adjustments we saw from him moving into the college game, where the puck movement has to come, but will it show up? Will it not? I don't know. That's kind of part of the question with him.
Yeah, I mean, it's been early.
That's a good way to put it, for sure.
There's still. Oh yeah, Josh Anderson did get terminated.
Oh really?
Yeah. Oh, it happened. Okay, it happened right. Okay. It happened in those couple of days after I got back from Canada. And
makes sense, yeah.
We were just getting ready to start the season, and we were so busy.
I had a million other things to think about, yeah.
That Josh Anderson's contract being terminated was not a thing that we thought about.
Is he still even playing?
He has not played anywhere this year.
Interesting.
So, tough break. I mean, They drafted a guy with a broken back, and he struggled with injuries the entire time.
Yep.
So, it wasn't. We tried to be as fair as we could without just being like, this guy's terrible. But he was always just.
The offense was just never there.
Well, and between that and health issues,
yeah.
I mean, when he was drafted, I talked to a couple of people, and we're trying to find Mark Mathot, a guy like that, big miss. So, and if you look of the guys from the third round, that's really their one. That's the guy that they drafted, and we were like, who, whatever's going to happen with Matt Steinberg is going to happen. We don't really know, but otherwise, their third round picks in the last several years have been fine.
Anderson was also this weird. It was on the cusp of an era where immediately after that, we've seen the Avs consistently draft puck skill talented defensemen and only puck skill talented defensemen.
Yeah. There's still very clearly an appreciation in the organization for those types of old school defenders.
Yep.
But I mean, look at that list of four guys. Connor Timmins is I wouldn't really call him new school. He's not a good skater, but he's a really high IQ defender.
Yep.
The league has always had room for guys like that. But then I mean, you look at Justin Barron. What is one of the
skating?
Exactly. you talk about Zhiravalov. It starts with his physical tools.
Yep. Offensive upside there for sure.
And then I already forgot who was the other guy that we were talking about. Drew Hellison.
Yeah,
Drew Hellison is like the ultimate new school example because he is what Josh Anderson was. He was a hard-nosed physical defender, but he has great feet.
Yep.
The big question about Drew Hellison is there going to be any offense whatsoever? And we saw more offensive instincts out of him in this last year in BC than the previous 2 years combined.
Yep.
Where the Avs look like geniuses right now. Like they are riding high on that pick right now. But the physical tools, the number one thing that you look at as the major difference between Anderson and Hellison is that Hellison is a very, very good skater. And Anderson I always thought Anderson moved well for his size.
Yeah, the big for his size asterisk is there.
Like he moved well for his size, and like you just have different expectations for guys that were big like that.
For sure.
But there was no skill.
Yep.
Like it was just big and mean. Like he understood his role to his credit. It wasn't like he did a lot of stuff that took him out of the water, but Barron is kind of the marriage of all of that. Their desire for an older school guy with good size who can defend really well, but also has those physical tools that really stand out to them. And I tell you, the Avs did not think Justin Barron was going to get to their pick last year.
Yep, I believe that for sure.
When I was poking around in the week before the draft trying to figure out who they were into, I mean, you remember we weren't even talking about Justin Barron during our process because
we had written him off as him going earlier anyway.
Well, and we had talked about him as a if blood clots weren't an issue, this conversation would be different.
Yep.
And the blood clots remained an issue until right before the draft, when he had surgery and got everything fixed, and then all of a sudden it was like,
good. Yep.
Blood clots are no longer an issue, and it just changed the whole conversation around him. And I remember that presser, and because I was like, keep an eye on Justin Barron. He probably, hopefully nobody from the organization listens to this episode, but I've become the master at listening to Alan Heppel's pressers because it's been a couple years in a row. It's been a couple of years now that I've been able to suss out who they like based on that. Just listening to him talk about certain guys. If we ask the question about a certain guy,
yeah.
and when he was talking about Barron last year, you could definitely tell that there was interest there. That once the health factors were behind them, that the organization had an eye for him. And talking to people in the week leading up to it, the Avs were not confident Barron would make it. I mean, you look at how that draft went, it was pretty chalky.
Yep.
And then the 3 picks for New Jersey ended up getting kind of wild. And then that Columbus pick
went to outer space, galaxy brain levels with that pick. Yeah.
Yeah. He was okay. This idea that like Nathan McKinnon had an impact on the pick it's a fun story, guys. But they didn't do a year of scouting and going through the interview process and the medical process to throw it all out the window and be like, well, Nathan McKinnon likes Justin Barron, so let's just get him the guy that he likes. Like, stop.
I feel like so this isn't really something that happens in hockey. Like, this is something that people, I think, are taking from basketball teams, and you've seen LeBron being the most famous,
like
where he really is the guy like running the team.
Like, relationships drive every sports league. You're always going to go with guys that you're more comfortable with, that you're whatever, right? Like, sure, but they already knew that they liked Justin Barron. The amount that, like, yeah, happy coincidence is a great way to put it.
Yep.
That it worked, like, that it worked out that way. Like, if Justin Barron goes the pick before, this isn't even a conversation.
Yep.
Whoever they end up picking, whatever they do, you know, to be honest with you, I'm like 85% sure that their pick after that would have been JJ Peterka.
I know.
The
Avs just love to be one pick away from guys that I want them to take.
They really liked JJ Peterka.
Me too.
And his like slip into the second round was kind of interesting. But yeah, it was like Justin Barron he's an interesting guy for the organization, especially because he now, like, the reason we're talking about him today, because they had like a pseudo social media funeral for him.
Yeah,
after their last game. How weird was that?
So, I mean, let's put some context here just for people that don't know. The QMJHL season had to adjust things based on Canada currently struggling with a bunch of COVID things going on.
Yeah.
At least for Halifax, their season is officially over, which means Justin Barron's season is officially over.
Yeah.
In their last game the other day, as AJ was talking about, Barron had 2 points, I believe, and the tweets for both of his points were from the Halifax main account were talking about how Barron scores in his final game as a Moosehead.
Yeah. And then they have an interview with him afterwards.
Yeah.
Where he talks, like, they ask him, what are your favorite memories? What did it mean to you to be drafted by the Mooseheads? It was, I was really struggling to recall a time, especially because, like, one, the Avs are super private about stuff.
Yep.
And so for that whole thing to just take place. It was so weird.
And this is like, there's been zero confirmation from anyone that Barron is even turning pro.
Right. Like, there was a world where he's eligible to play in the AHL next year because of his age.
Correct.
And it was all good and well, right? Like, they could decide to put him in the AHL if they wanted to. He was also eligible to go back to junior.
He hasn't even signed his ELC yet.
Yeah, like it would have been a mild disappointment, but not the biggest shock in the world had he just gone back to Halifax.
Yep.
And so that they over the weekend held a very public like funeral for his junior career. It was really, really strange stuff. And it was just like everybody was just openly talking about it. Apparently on the broadcast, as Jackie had mentioned to me on Twitter, on the broadcast, they said they openly talked about it, that they would be very surprised if Barron did not join the Eagles this week.
So maybe they know something some other people don't, but
I would imagine they have a pretty good idea about what's going on. And the fact that like Barron, like there was no like Barron
just answered the questions. Yeah.
goes with this. I'm like, okay, clearly this is done. He's moving on. He's moving on to pro hockey. And that's why we decided to talk about him today, because one, we all of a sudden don't have Avalanche hockey to talk about, and this just sort of fell out of the sky for us.
I do want to keep talking about Justin Barron, but all of that awkwardness definitely makes me want to drink. So we are sponsored by Breckenridge Brewery, the official beer of DNVR. You can get it down at the DNVR bar, 8 different kinds on tap, or keep an eye out for the Breckenridge seltzers that you can get at your local liquor store. The Good Company hard seltzer is absolutely delicious. They taste like candy. It's kind of dangerous, to be honest. That's how good they taste. Check them out. Use the Breck Beer Locator online. Find them and give them a try. We are also brought to you by Gabby Insurance. That's GABI.com/DNVR. Make sure you do the /DNVR to let them know we sent you. When it comes to car and home insurance, don't we deserve better? I know I do. A lot of members and staff here at DNVR, including AJ and I, put their policy to the test and turned to Gabby. When they did, they saved hundreds of dollars. I think I saved around $350. AJ, I thought you were somewhere around the same amount.
Yep. $364.
There you go. A couple $100 easy in your pocket, just like that, by using Gabby. Some of us even saved well over $1,000 doing it. You might as well give it a try. There's nothing to lose. It's completely free to try and find yourself a bundle of money by getting better home and auto insurance. Again, that's Gabby.com/DNVR to save yourself some cash. With
Easy
that
to spell, man, because it stands for Get a Better Insurance.
Boom. Easy. Get a better insurance, baby. Use that money you save. Maybe consider signing up for an annual membership to the DNVR. Not only do you get our amazing coverage, but you get a free t-shirt, free mask as well with your annual payment. Why not? Jump on it. It's great stuff all the way around. And when you sign up for an annual account right now, you will get a holistic wellness stick as well. You know, we're big fans of CBD here. They will send you a pack of 10 milligrams of CBD sticks that you can just drop right into your drink. You just crack it open, pop it in there, and it'll take care of migraines, aches and pains, things like that for you. So jump on it today. Also, be sure to check them out at holisticwellness.com. That's HOLISTIK wellness.com. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, the number 1 rated sportsbook app out there. So, jumping into Justin Barron, 31 points in 33 games in the QMJHL this year, 8 goals, 23 assists. As far as points per game numbers, that's top 10 of all defensemen in the Q, including that a absolutely absurdly good Charlottetown team had a couple of guys ahead of him. So very, very good. I think the two of us, AJ, would agree that he's completely ready, or rather is completely done with the queue and ready for the next step.
Yeah, I think he was definitely a guy that was ready for the next challenge.
Yep.
To be honest, I just didn't get to see him play very much this year. But in the couple of viewings that I had of him, I mean, you can usually tell with guys in juniors
when they're ready. Yep.
You don't always have to know like which guy's been drafted where to have an opinion on, it can inform, but a lot of times, especially in juniors, especially in the CHL, it's obvious. Like, these are the guys that have separated. In college, you have a lot of, in the NCAA, you have a lot of like, this guy's 23, and
right.
he's like physically mature, and he can kind of just do some things that other guys can't. And there's a lot of those like landmine stat guys in
for sure
NCAA. But in the CHL, it's usually pretty easy to pick out especially if you just watch.
Yep.
To like pick out guys where you're like, he's good at this level, and
yeah, they all have a certain confidence to their game where it just stands out compared to their peers.
I think Barron's poor Team Canada showing, it was a good balance for the hype train, right?
It was.
It was good. It was good to see, like, okay, you got to see the things that you worry about. When the pick was made, from a more analytical standpoint, there was a reason. Like, Will Scouch was really down on the pick.
Yep.
And he had all of the data that showed,
the underlying numbers.
These were concerns. He
talked about passing concerns and puck management, things like that. Yep.
Just not a guy that drives a lot of play. A guy that it's easy to fall in love with because the physical tools are there.
Yep.
Because he's right-handed. He's 6'2". He's 200 pounds already. He's kind of there already.
Yep.
He skates the way that he does, where if you just sit down and you have a live viewing of this guy, you're just like, my goodness. Like, it's super easy to see where the value, like where the appeal was when going through a traditional scouting process, when looking at some of the underlying and draft numbers relative to his peers, a lot of that stuff didn't hold up. And what's interesting about Scouch and the data and all of that stuff that they're working on in regards to the draft is that it's all very new.
Yep.
We don't know the long-term value of this. We don't know the long-term viability, and how much do those numbers serve as a red flag in the future? If Justin Barron ends up a total bust, then we may look back at that and be like, okay, well, there was data here that warned us about this.
Yep.
And it might increase the value of that data moving forward because it starts to mine out. Okay, well, this guy's got physical tools and he's got all this, but what he's actually doing on the ice is a concern.
And this is true of any new advanced stat, right? Like, there's going to be imperfections. There's going to be things that aren't perfect. Any given number that you look at in a vacuum means very, very little. You have to take a full package look at something. And you don't, I'm not saying discount the numbers. You take a look at them and you say, all right, this is something to consider. But as you said, AJ, especially with new statistics, new types of analytical environments, it's really hard to gauge anything until you have a couple of years down the line and you can say, all right, how does data line up? over the course of a handful of years, a handful of players, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And the reality is Justin Barron could be a slam dunk NHLer in 3 years, or he could be still in the AHL toiling away. Like, we have no idea.
Yeah.
So we'll wait and see.
Yeah, we'll wait. And I mean, obviously, right? Like that's, you look at every single prospect ever drafted and you go, well, we'll wait and see. But the other thing, I have long been a draft Halifax guys person, because if you look at it, I think it's something over the last 20 years, they've only had 2 guys that were drafted in the first round that busted, and one of them was a goaltender, so he barely counts as a person.
Them in London, man. They just
pumped out
NHLers.
Yeah, well, and if you look at their first round history, their skater history, it was one guy from the mid 2000s. I can't remember his name, but otherwise, every single guy that they drafted or that got drafted out of Halifax, not even just the Euros, but all of the domestic guys too, every single one of them ended up an NHLer of some caliber, like varying degrees of NHLers. But it was a lot more common for them to be like the Alex Tangays, Timo Myers, Nick Ehlers type, like really good NHL players have just been coming out of the Moosehead program forever.
Yep.
So, I mean, obviously Nathan McKinnon was pretty good Moosehead.
That one a little too obvious, maybe.
Yeah, but with Barron, I mean, what's next for him is that he's getting dropped into an Eagles defense and let's just assume he is on his way to pro hockey right now. They have
it certainly seems
left,
like it.
There are 12 Eagles games left. Quarantine and all that. I'm assuming he'll have to go through something and he can't.
It would appear that every person that lives in Halifax knows that he's going to the Colorado Eagles. So
yeah. Yeah. The last top prospect that Sakic traded was Connor Bleakley, and the shine had already.
Yeah, that was very much not going to sign him anyway.
Yeah. So let's for the sake of this conversation,
accept that it's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. What do we want to see out of him at the AHL level?
I mean,
we're not having the conversation about him like black acing it up for the postseason and him being around the NHL team and him. To be honest, we're not even really talking about him pushing for the NHL roster next season. Let's just pump the brakes and let's let him be in the AHL for a year before we do all that. But for right now, there are 12 AHL games left. Okay. Let's say that after, he still has to sign and travel and all of these things have to happen. Let's say he plays in 10 of them.
Yep.
What do you want to see out of those 10 games? What's like the number one thing that you look for?
Physical adjustment. Look, he has the size, so he needs to get in to pro hockey. He needs to play against men, and he needs to understand how to use it. We see a lot of guys that make the transition from juniors that have gotten away with just being bigger and not having to play bigger. So for me, especially as a defenseman, I want to see him be able to use that physicality to a certain extent. And he doesn't have to like blow people up with hits or anything like that. It's just, I'm not worried about his skating. His skating will drop into pro hockey without the blink of an eye. That'll be fine for him. If he can get the physical side of the game up to a level where he's comfortable hitting and taking hits, once that's there, and that's in this 10 games, it's next year where you really want to see the puck movement, that sort of stuff start to come online.
Defensively, I think you don't have major expectations right away.
Yeah, if he gets scored on like crazy, it is what it is. Sure.
You won't love that. You won't make too much of it. But it will be a slight concern if he rolls in and for 10 games gets absolutely like lit up.
Well,
I'm not a plus minus guy, but if he goes negative 25 in those 10 games, you're concerned about something.
It's one of those things because of his skating, there should be enough skating there where he can bail himself out of some of those situations, right?
Yeah.
But I agree. You definitely want to see the brain keep up with the feet to a certain extent. If for 10 straight games he's making the same dumb decisions that cost him, that's not going to be a good look.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would imagine by game 8 or 9, Greg Cronin is like, okay,
I've had enough of this.
Yeah. We're going to at least sit the kid down for a night, you know? Yeah. I don't really, to be honest with you, I'm just not that worried about it. I feel like this is bonus development for the Avs.
Yeah, I agree.
Coming into when he was drafted, obviously we knew COVID was going to wreak havoc on a traditional development path. It's why we haven't talked about it. We're going to talk about it next segment, but it's why I am interested in punting on this draft class entirely. It doesn't really have anything to do with the scouting and everything to do with screwed up development. I think that with Barron in the AHL right now, though, he immediately becomes their top, assuming Timmins is still on the NHL team.
Yeah.
He becomes their top prospect on defense.
Yeah, there were
no offense to Klarman, of course.
One of these is a first rounder and one of them is a sixth. So,
well, yeah, and one of them,
is 22, 23.
Yeah, like Nate Klarman's pushing his AARP card at this point. Right. Like he's already getting discounted breakfast at diners. So with Barron, he's 19. He doesn't turn 20 until the fall. He's a dude that you want to be realistic with. It's going to take time. But a thing that he has in common with Bo and Byram, one of the things that I like about both of them a lot, is that they are at their best defending before the offense ever gets going.
Yep.
They are deny at the blue line. They are, stop that shit in the neutral zone and push it the other way.
Outskate a dude to a spot and just seal him off, basically. Yeah.
Get the puck on your stick and get it out of there. Move it. Now, Byram did that at a very, very high level, plus his ability to carry things. But it's with Barron, I think he's a healthy mix of offense and defense. I don't like this Justin Barron is not an offensive defenseman. This is not a classic puck moving defender, right? This is not a guy that maybe he runs an Eagles power play, but he's not gonna run a power play in the NHL. He's gonna be on your PK.
Yeah, it's the rise of the transition defenseman is really what Justin Barron, I won't say signifies because it's already happening before him, but it's the mold that he fits into.
Yeah, and the thing with Justin Barron, that 10 years ago he also would have been a first round pick.
Yeah, with his size and a skating ability for sure, but
yeah,
the style of play would be different though.
Okay. To answer the question from chat, no, I'm not worried about the Avs becoming too offensive on defense. As long as they continue to give up 25 shots per game.
You can have as much offense if you want at that point.
Yeah, they are an elite defensive team. They suppress shots
better than anyone.
Their recent competition is 3 Bruins teams.
Yep.
So you're in good company at that point, especially when it's not coming at the expense. They are not last year's Dallas Stars, where they sacrificed all offensive generation. This year's Talus Stars, like they are not they don't have a problem of being too offensive. You know, it's not like Toronto, who has had to go out and actively tried to balance the skill sets on their defense to get better defensively while maintaining the offensive edge that they had. They are an elite suppression team. They are the best defensive team in the NHL. Justin Barron fitting into them makes them better defensively, not offensively.
Yeah, and kind of to some of Chad's point here, without dipping too deep into the conversation of what actually is good defense.
Yeah.
Sometimes offense is the best defense.
Well, and what are you seeing the league value? What we've called Colorado the grand experiment here, and why? Because they've gone all in. They've gone hard in on they play a system
ability.
They play a system that values guys who can move a puck first and foremost. Now, Ryan Graves and Patrick Nemeth and those types of guys are getting paid, but why do you think that Jacob McDonald dropped into their system and succeeded the way that he did? What is the one thing? What is the thing that Jacob McDonald does really well at every level he's ever played? He's moved pucks. He has puck skill. And in the way that the Avs play, the system that they're playing in, puck skill is the most important thing. The ability to get a puck and move it efficiently and move as a 5-man unit. It's exactly how they want to play. It's how the system is designed. Because if you look at their breakout and you look at their supports and you look at, okay, they've got, I wish I had an X's and O's for this to prove my point here. But
breakdown,
yeah, exactly. But it's the way that they break the puck out. You have to have puck skill to do it, because they're not relying on flipping pucks into center ice and winning 50-50 battles.
They're maintaining possession
They're valuing possession. It's why you see the Avs reverse pucks so much behind their own goaltender. It's why you see, instead of, Gerard will skate. He does this all the time, where he skates to the blue line and he stops and he spins around and he waits until something is open.
Yeah.
And then off he goes. He has to make a decision.
It's regularly more than one D-to-D pass for them on the back end, looking for that stretch pass or the breakout or whatever. But
the Avs value the puck. They, if you want to talk about what makes the Avalanche different, they value the puck more than other teams. They are less comfortable just giving it away and saying, okay, well, because how do you score goals? You have the puck, you shoot, right? Like the basics here. But if you're dumping pucks in and you're constantly chipping, what do you then have to go do? Get it back.
Yep.
You have to go and get it back. So they have tried to maximize their ability to play as a transition team, a controlled zone exit and entry team. They have tried to change how they play in the neutral zone more than anything else, where they play with possession versus without it. That's the biggest difference between Colorado. It's why when you have looked at it's why when you looked at like the stats guys over the last few years have been like, oh, Colorado is just in a different world when it comes to controlled exits and entries.
It's because they commit to them. Yeah.
Yeah, because their whole identity, offensively and defensively, they don't want people coming in with control, and they want to have them. They value the puck more than other teams do. It's how they play. It's what they focus on. It's what they value. It's their identity as a team. And when we get into a guy like Justin Barron, what he does, his ability to skate pucks in and out of his own zone fits immediately with what they do. You add in the size, and that's great. Like, you'll love that. Great. He's not 5'7". Great. He's got your traditional size. You like that. Can he process the game? Can he read the game at a high enough level that he's able to defend and make good decisions with the puck skills that he has? He is more of a natural skills guy. Whereas you look at Connor Timmins, they are the opposite players.
Yeah.
Timmins is a guy that maximizes his skills
via hockey intelligence.
Yeah, by just being smart, understanding how to play, where he's going, what he's doing. Barron's not going to be the same mold.
This is funny because I think it'll come up in our next segment as well, but your explanation of Barron here reminds me a little bit of Eric Johnson. Use your physical gifts and talent to accomplish the goals of getting the puck going the correct direction and rely on that ability and hopefully, Barron doesn't blow out his knees. So the skating is still incredibly good too.
Yeah. And certainly I'm not going to sit here and tell you that size is irrelevant. If you had 6 Sam Girards, you'd have a defense really good at some things, but really not good at other things.
Too much of anything becomes a problem because then you have something that just gets abused, right?
If you have 6 Cale Makars, you have a really weird defense too. If you had 6 Victor Hedmans, you'd have a really weird defense.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know. If you had 6 Victor Hedmans, you might be perfect.
That's the Hedman's kind of the best of everything a little bit, but
it'd be like if you had 6 Chris Prongers, you'd have the best defense of all time.
But even then, if you have 6 Hedmans, there's a Hedman on each pairing that you're not getting the most out of then because Hedman's doing the heavy lifting.
The thing with the size conversation, and this is one of those things where like the Avalanche are kind of at odds with a lot of the fan base that is like, you need to be grittier and you need to be tougher. Like, as long as you're effective with your size, it's fine. Like you don't need to be like, oh my God, we're so physical. We maul teams and grind them down. You think teams aren't tired after playing the Avs because they've spent all game defending?
This is using your size isn't the big blow up hits that everyone remembers from Nikita Zadorov necessarily. It's using your size to rub people out when they try and cross the blue line, using your size to win corner battles, using your size to shove people out from your net front. It's a lot of these things happen not even necessarily on camera if you're watching from home or as a primary point of the play. It's just the consistent flow of a hockey game where these things happen over and over and over. If you've rubbed it forward out 8 times coming up the near boards, they're going to stop doing it most of the time because they don't want it to happen again. Yeah. So
there was a really good example of this the last Arizona game where Connor Garland came up the wing and you could tell like 8 games in, Connor Garland was over the Avs.
Yep.
Because he rolled in and normally Garland would dump the puck in and chase it while his teammates went for a change.
Yeah, he'd be the last guy off.
So that they wouldn't just be like, here, have the puck. It's not totally free. It's how you see teams change 95% of the time. They dump it in and a guy goes and chases while all the other guys change. And you could see he just didn't have any interest. He dumped that thing in. He took one step inside the blue line and he goes, never mind. And he just stopped and he curled around and went back to the bench. And it's like that right there, like that is a great example of he just had enough. He was over it. He was supposed to go dump and chase while his team changed, and the Avs just wore him down where he was just like, I'm out. I'm just bye. And they didn't need to be overly physical to do it. They didn't need to have the huge hits, Like Zadorov was great at denying zone entries, as Jeremy mentions in the chat. Like, he was great at denying zone entries because teams just didn't test it as often. He used his length, his size. He was very good with the stick and disrupting flow, causing offsides, stripping of pucks, all types of those things, right? They didn't want to dump and chase on him because then he would hit them. But if they got into the zone against Zadorov, teams were very comfortable because he breaks down.
Yep.
He just breaks down. He does not process the game in his own zone at a level that is any good. It's not an NHL level.
Yeah, and we've kind of come full circle here in the Avs' commitment to denial defense.
Yeah.
And yeah, that is what it is. On that note, if you're tired of rubbing one out, maybe get your stuff manscaped, and it'll help in the bedroom for you a little bit. It could do the thing you need it to do. You never know on this one. Head on over to manscaped.com. Use code DNVR to get 20% off and free shipping.
I can't believe that you just said that. It is too early for that nonsense. Oh my God. That was my instant reaction.
Look, Manscaped gets the job done. I don't know what else to tell you. So jump on it. Get over there. Use the code DNVR to let them know we sent you. They got the trimmer. They got breath mints. They got shavers. They got toners. They got everything you could possibly need. Manscaped.com. We're also brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 rated sportsbook app out there. Highly recommend. You can get a bunch of amazing odds boosts from these guys every single day. And when you sign up with code DNVR, they will get you even better stuff, including right now, this weekend, you can bet on another UFC event coming on. Look, 26-1 odds. That's what they're handing out for UFC 261's title fight. Jump on it. Bet $5 on either fighter to win, and if they win the belt, you walk out with $130. Easy money in the bag. You got a good read. Pick a fighter. Win yourself some good cash. If you don't like MMA, you can always bet on hockey, basketball, baseball, football.
How many Manscaped reads do we have per week?
It changes every week, but it's usually 2 or 3.
Yeah. Imagine trying to come up with 2 or 3 totally original ways to lead into a Manscaped read every week for months on end. Like, feel free, but feel free to think that we've jumped the shark. But honestly, that comment's cringy as shit.
To this comment from Breckton, who says, I'm kind of shocked that Ali isn't surprised anymore that Rudo pulls these out of his bag. I just wasn't. I'm like getting other stuff done, listening to you guys, and I was just not expecting it to be like that. Like, I don't know. I was like, I can't believe he just said it. It still shocks me. I don't know why. It just really does.
Yeah, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, folks, but you know what? Either way, you can still support us by going to Manscaped. So, also, check out DraftKings Sportsbook, #1 rated sportsbook app. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. Other terms, restrictions, and conditions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700. Last but not least, we have a new sponsor for all of y'all as well. The premier dispensary for you guys. Give you a bunch of amazing deals. Solace Meds. Solace Meds has 4 convenient locations here in Colorado: Fort Collins, Wheat Ridge, one off of Broadway, and one just blocks away on East Colfax, right next to the DNVR bar. So if you want to hit up the bar, get your CBD products as well, that's the way to do it. The coolest thing right now about these guys is they're giving away a trip to Jamaica at the end of April. So look, you want to get your products, you want to get your dispensary stuff, you want to go hang out in Jamaica, win-win. Just jump on it. Solace Meds. You can go to solacemeds.com/sweepstakes. Sweepstakes? Wow, I can't talk anymore. To find the rules and get yourself entered. They're great stuff. I don't know what to tell you. obviously we're big fans of CBD and dispensary stuff here at DNVR. So you know it's good when we add them to the list of our amazing sponsors. Use code.
Go ahead.
Use code DNVR20 to save 20% off your entire purchase when you make the trip down to a Solace Meds location.
I would just like to add, it's so odd that Colorado has gotten like the stigma of like a home of the pot smokers.
Yeah.
You know, like marijuana's been legalized in how many states now?
Yeah, it's like 15 or 20 states now.
Like it's fairly common-ish in the United States now, and like just speaking personally, like very few people in my life are what you would think of as like a traditional stoner type.
Agreed.
Like there are like one or two people that absolutely you're like, if that given, you know, if that person has 4 hours of free time, what do I think that they're doing? They're probably getting high. But most of the time it's like it's just not that big of a deal.
It was when I went to Vegas shortly after they legalized, it was like pandemonium there.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Compared to here where like it got legalized and everyone was like, cool, we'll keep going about our business.
Yeah. It was like, all right, like no more shady phone calls to Greg with the backpack. You
right.
know? Like,
yeah.
All right, man. I can remove that, you know? It's and like the rise of CBD products where it's not about getting high.
Yeah.
It's about like treating something.
Wellness,
you know?
yeah.
Yeah, like it's like there's like a purpose to a targeted purpose. Other than just like, well, I'm just gonna get high, you know, and stereotype. It is. I don't know. I think it's great, and it's so funny. Like coming from Texas,
yeah,
and like having so many people that are still on the fringes of my life that are, you know, that are like, weed is evil, and I'm like, I don't understand how people could still be so in that bubble where they're like, it's evil. I can understand it not being part of your life, or you just being like, at this point I've missed the boat or whatever. But like people being like, this is a bad thing, and it does there's so many things there's so many aspects of it that help people's lives like daily, you know, pain reduction, or, you know, me with the migraines, like,
yep,
it really is like one of the things we've gotten right, one of the big like shifts in society that we've started to like, we're winning on that front. We're gaining ground here because it's obvious, it's right, it's correct. 100 years from now, it's probably going to be like, are they for real with this? Like looking back on this era, like it was a big deal when it happened, and being like, what? Dr.
Dubs out here prescribing CBD.
Yeah. I mean, that's what the D in CBD is. It's for dubs.
All right. AJ, should we talk 10 minutes of draft here before you got to get out of here?
Yeah.
Bob's list came out today, so maybe the first like official big list of, they're calling it mid-season, I guess, but whatever.
You got to call it something, right?
Just call it the nonsense that it is. Absolute nonsense draft list. Owen Power ranked first overall still. The good news is you've seen him play because NCAA actually played most of their season. I know you've been on the record saying this dude is Eric Johnson.
He reminds me. I was not into the draft when Eric Johnson was drafted first overall.
Same.
I was
my time. Yeah.
not watching hockey. I was at we'll call it a phase of my life in which I was disconnected from the sport. So I just wasn't really. It didn't.
Yeah, wasn't a thing.
I've always said it's easy to see why he was drafted first overall. Right-handed, 6'6", and a great skater, and he puts up good numbers. Here we are in 2021, and you have a guy who is 6'5.5", 213 pounds, puts up good numbers in college hockey as a freshman. He's a great skater, does everything, right? Has all the potential in the world.
Yep. It's a lot of potential.
EJ is indeed 6'6". He is a huge man.
Yep. Can confirm.
He might be listed at 6'5", but he was always the biggest guy in that room.
Yeah. Him and Miko are huge human beings, man.
Miko just keeps getting a little bigger. Well, although, it's now been a calendar year since I've been in a locker room.
Yeah, who knows?
So, actually, it's 14 months now since I was last in a locker room. Yeah, let me tell you, training camp next year is going to be awkward. Because it's going to be what's up, all these dudes that I used to see daily?
So, and let's be realistic here. If the Avs aren't picking 28th or later, it's going to be a disappointment, right?
We'll see how the President's Trophy race goes, and with their cancellation and all that, it could could complicate some of this.
Sure.
Eric Johnson coming back would only help the Avalanche. Yep. Eric Johnson would only help Colorado get better. Anyway, just answering that question right off.
Yeah.
Anthony, save that question for one of our Q&A shows, and I'll tell as much of the story as I'm allowed to.
There you go.
There were some things that led to that deal.
In any case.
Yeah. Moving on from that, though.
So, look, let's say certainly mid to late 20s is pretty realistic for the Avalanche.
Yeah, I'm okay, President's Trophy race and all that, it'll be 25 or lower.
Yeah. So
it really just kind of just depends, but 25 or lower. So when you're looking at a guy that's 17 or whatever on this list, it's
maybe
probably
not gonna make it. Yeah.
Probably don't get too attached. As much as I have attached myself to Cole Sillinger, I have no
aspirations of him falling to where the Avs pick.
Yeah. There's no well, maybe, who knows how it's gonna go, but we're planning for 25 to 32, and really it's more like 28 to 32 that we're kind of looking at it.
Because I'm looking at Bob's list here, and the Avs penchant for taking first round D may be over, as Bob has a D at 19, and then the next D down at 34.
And that D, Daniil Chayka.
Yep.
Also, how about that? There's another guy coming out of the AJHL.
Yeah, that from Brooks, no less. Yeah. And Corson Ceulemans, I think that's his last name. But they're scheduled 18 and 19 there, Ceulemans and Chayka. So the Avs may have to do some finagling if they're looking to add to their D in the first round. Or they could just take a forward. So
at this point in there, where they are.
Yeah.
Oh, random yawn, excuse me. If you look at you could make the argument they need to kind of replenish the defense. Right?
I think it's pretty easy to make that argument
because, well, so there's a couple of factors here. You can make the argument that they're running out of defense because Dravilov, you think one more year in Russia and then pro hockey, and then even then, you're not like expecting a ton out of the guy, right? Whatever you get out of Klerman and Lieberman is whatever you get. And then Barron in the AHL, Timmins either in the AHL or in the NHL, like right on that cusp.
Yep.
And then Helleson, after the year that he had, Helleson, you're looking at one last year.
Yep.
Of college hockey and then Eagles.
Yep.
Like, there's not a lot on that front.
Compare it to the forward side. You feel great about Jean-Luc Foudy. You feel pretty good about Colby Ambrosio. Down the line a little bit, a decision has to be made now about Tyler Weiss instead of it being more of a write-off in his senior year based on the year he had this year.
Yeah. Well, and no Ralston removes that.
It does. But there's still a handful of prospects coming that aren't immediately graduating to pro. On the forward side, you also have a ton of dudes about to graduate to pro, with Ranta and Newhook already doing it. Bocage, Mutala likely not that far behind in this coming off season.
Yeah, I mean they have to decide. Those guys are either on ELCs or they're out of the system.
Yep.
So they've got to make decisions there. The big difference is what you're talking about here, the huge influx of forwards into pro hockey. They're going to have, Nikolai Kovalenko coming over from Russia.
Yep.
You're going to have Sampo Ranta and Alex Newhook, Shane Powers and Martin Kaut all on your AHL team pushing for NHL time in the next year. You've got all of I've never seen this label on Gatorade before that says contains no fruit juice. I've never seen that label. Is it was somebody accusing Gatorade of putting
there was a
fruit?
lawsuit in there or something?
Why is that on this label? Anyway, that's what distracted me, is that I was looking down and it said contain no fruit juice, and it's like, do people drink Gatorade for the fruit juice part of it? Like, what the hell just happened?
But point being, the Avs have a surplus of forward prospects at the AHL level.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that they're going to be able to have in there, and whoever they take first in this draft, like this draft class currently set to be a whole 3 prospects. It's not going to be a major influx into their system of anything.
Yep.
Unless they take 3 goaltenders, which
given the way Miner's playing,
highest of high comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of those guys have their rights expiring this year. Bocage, Berzin, Miner, Mutala.
And you have to think Bocage and Mutala are close to locks for contracts.
Yeah, and I think Berzin is probably good for an AHL deal with the way that he's played.
Yep.
And then Miner. We were going to talk about Miner.
Yeah. We
kind of didn't because things just got sidetracked. But Trent Miner, another shutout.
Yep.
Like the dude has been a shutout factory since getting back to the WHL. So what do you do there?
Yeah.
You have Eustace Annunen coming to North America next year, and he's kind of been the crown jewel of these guys. Hunter Miska is still signed. Peyton Jones is still signed. Adam Werner is an RFA.
Decision's got to be made.
Peyton Jones is still signed through next year, right?
I thought he only signed a 1 year.
I thought it was okay. That would help.
Still.
It is just the one.
Yeah,
okay. So then they have decisions that they can make. They can cut loose Werner, they can cut loose Jones, and then they can give an ELC to Miner if they want. again, I think an AHL deal to minor would be the smart route. The problem is that he might be outplaying it.
Yeah.
Like
at 948 with save percentage with a 1.2 goals against in 7 games in the dub.
Right, well, and when he was in the AHL earlier this year, he was competitive.
Yeah.
And so he was a guy when the Avs drafted him in the 7th round, there were people who hit me up immediately and were more excited about that pick than any other that Colorado made that year. And that's shaping up to be a pretty decent class.
Wallsted's going top 10, so you don't have to worry about the Avalanche having any shot at that.
Yeah, I mean, we're not even having the Wallsted conversation.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, given these rankings, the Sebastian Casa conversation isn't even happening.
Yep.
He would be the guy, though. Like, if you wanted to talk about who the Avs should take in the first round, this would be a perfect year to take a goaltender.
Just totally punt the draft as far as skaters are concerned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you take if there's a goaltender that makes sense, obviously, wherever they are in the first round. I would be fine taking a goaltender this year.
Sure. This year's going to be extremely strange no matter what, but
God, there are OHL guys on this list. I don't know how you would take anyone out of the OHL.
Given that they didn't play this year.
Yeah.
Well, so some of the OHL guys did go and play in like European leagues and stuff, like Foodie did for a little while too.
Yeah, I forget that the Swedish 3 League was part of the Foodie path.
Yeah. It's going to be one of those weird things on like his elite prospects page forever.
Well, it was like Brant Clark, the OHL kid that went and played in Slovakia for 30 games or whatever it was.
That's the type of knowledge you need to know when I bring back impossible trivia on this podcast.
Yeah.
But look, the reality is when you're talking about picking in the late 20s in this year's draft, it's just a lot of teams throwing darts in the dark.
I mean, that's true in a normal draft.
Yeah.
Throw all of the factors in that you have this year. And to be honest with you, drafting out of like Russia might be the safest thing you can do.
At least you have tape. Yeah.
It's like draft out of Russia and draft out of the USHL. I am really interested. I think U18s are going to be
a big factor. Yeah.
Because it's going to be some of the only live viewings that we get of a handful of these guys. I'm still on record. I still think that they should have a prospect like bonanza, where they take basically this list. You take this list, take them. I would say the top 120 draft prospects. You shuffle them onto a bunch of different teams. You assign them teams.
Then just have them play. Yeah.
Come to North America. And have them like boot camp it up for 2 weeks and just play against each other.
That'd be sick.
And that's it. Like because you've missed out on all of your other opportunities. You know, a guy like Chaz Lucius. You know, he's let that dude who's been hurt for a lot of the season. Let that dude pop off for a couple of weeks.
Honestly, like attaching something like that onto the combine would be so cool.
It would be awesome. Like the NFL has the Senior Bowl, which is super cool and a great resource. You know, the WJCs are great and the U18s are great. Like they kind of serve that function as it is. But in this year where they're, you know, a lot of guys haven't had a chance to play and haven't had a chance to showcase anything. It just makes sense to me that you make a list of your top 120-ish dudes, and then, you know, however it ends up having to be, and then you bring them all into one place and just have them play against each other for a couple weeks. You know, just 2 weeks, just bam, they play every other day. You don't make it may not make a massive difference because you're not going to be like, okay, well, they're not playing for anything. Guys are trying not to get hurt or whatever, but a live viewing here for guys that otherwise don't have them.
I mean, it's certainly, maybe for the guys at the top of the list, it's not that important, but
yeah,
like you're talking about a guy in the 50-60 range that just hasn't had a lot of viewings. That's a dude that could help himself a ton.
I mean, look at this list from Bob, okay? 50, the rank 55 through 61. Every single one of those guys is the USHL.
Yep.
There's more guys on the USHL. For one, there are more guys in the USHL than normal because
a bunch of people went to play there because they couldn't play elsewhere. But
that was their option. It's also why this is a dream for the USHL. It's why they draft these guys, right? It's why at the bottom of every elite prospects page you see Justin Barron got drafted in the USHL in like the 8th round.
Yep.
Those guys always get drafted into both of those leagues, and this has just been the one time that they got to capitalize on it. But like you go through this list, there's almost no OHL players on here. You mean to tell me that there aren't any good OHL players this year? Like, no. Of course there are some good OHL. It might be a down year, but give these kids a chance. You go through rank 78, Ryan Winterton. Give that kid an opportunity to play against some of the other prospects, make a name for himself. Give him a chance. Maybe, they have a 3rd or 4th round grade on the guy right now, but they see him play live and he ends up drafted in the 2nd round.
So confirmed the Avs take 3 OHLers and I have absolutely zero footage to show everyone this year.
Yeah. They take 3 OHLers and cut to us trying to review it at the end, and we're both just like, I hate this organization.
So, yeah, a lot of this draft is just going to be a total crapshoot, basically, is the point that we're making.
Chase Stillman from Denmark.
Oh, baby.
Bet that's easy footage to get a hold of.
On that note, any final thoughts on the drafts, Avs D prospects, whatever you want, AJ? Beautiful side.
There's a guy in the draft named Riley Kidney. That's awesome. I don't know. So a lot of these, there's 2 approaches to this draft. Mine is punt it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who are like, oh, well, good scouting teams are going to have a huge advantage this year because they're going to be able to get guys later. I'm of the opinion that this is all development time that these guys lost. This might end up just being a screwed up draft class because they can't ever get their dev time back.
Yep.
And this is like a crucial year. The draft year is a crucial draft year. It's where you see players take that big lead. It's where you see Sasha Mutala, Nicola Waugh. Do you remember Nicola Waugh when he was like a top Q pick and he had tons of hype on him in the queue and got drafted in the 4th round because it was just
Yep.
And then was like, oh, by the way, I'm super dope now. It just took him that extra year of development, and that year just doesn't exist for these kids.
Yep.
Which is why I'm punting on it. I would rather punt it than the Detroit Red Wings have 12 picks. And if there's a guy that you trust with 12 picks in a screwed up draft, it's probably Steve Yzerman.
Find a way to work some magic.
But at the same time, they could get nothing out of those 12 picks.
I definitely believe there will be some unusual steals in this draft, but I also wonder how much of those steals are going to be pure luck as opposed to quality scouting.
I mean, separate those in a normal year.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Is it's hard enough.
Are there gonna be more guys that end up in the NHL from the 5th round from this particular class than normal? We have no idea. That's a lot of people just seem to be making that leap.
Yeah.
That the 3rd round is suddenly going to produce 22 NHL players because the scouting was screwed up
And
or
even,
something.
like, obviously opinions change over time, but even before all of this shutdown stuff, the early returns on this draft class was that it was not going to be a stronger one. So
People were super down on it. They've been down on it. I mean, fair point though. Like, is this more 2012 or is this 2017?
Yeah.
Because you remember we kind of said the same stuff about 2017.
Yep.
Like we were like,
it's not great.
And now if you redraft 2017, you have 3 surefire franchise players going 1, 2, and 3.
Yep.
In Makar, Heiskanen, and Pettersson. In what order? I don't know. And how you would prioritize them, I don't know. But like that was a draft where we were like, this isn't really that great of a draft class. And look at it now.
You never know. That's the takeaway. Is everybody's just guessing at the end of the day.
Yeah, my biggest problem is the development time is lost forever for these kids. They don't no prospect tournament or whatever will ever get that back. Them working out for a year will never change any of that.
Indeed.
So, boy, I think outside of those couple of guys, though, we were pretty right about 2017.
Yeah, it was a few guys that flourished, but
like that top 10, Hischier, Patrick, Heiskanen, Makar, Pettersson, some studs.
Yep.
Really, four good to great NHL players, and then Nolan Patrick.
Yep.
Who admittedly has had them he missed an entire year with migraine problems.
But immediately after the top 5, Cody Glass has not lived up to the hype.
Yeah.
Elias Anderson has been a disaster in New York.
On a second team.
Yeah. Middlestat, a lot of people saw that okayness coming, I think.
Yeah. And admittedly for Middlestat, it's been better this year.
It has. He's proven to be an NHLer at least, yeah.
It's been better versus
the bar was low. Yeah.
We'll see with Middlestat, but at least it trended in the correct direction. And then Michael Rasmussen, which was the easiest prediction of all time that he was going to be a bust.
Yep.
And I don't really have anything negative to say about Owen Tippett. He's been fine in his rookie year in Florida.
I still love Owen Tippett. A little lacking in production, but nothing crazy.
And then you get into some good ones like Velarde,
now that he's healthy.
Suzuki.
Netjes has been great. Yeah, Suzuki too.
Cal Foote is
functional.
He's in the NHL. Brandstrom is still kind of odd. Valimaki, Liljegren, Vakanainen. And then the
20s hit.
Of solid picks at the beginning of Norris, Thomas, Hedel, and Yamamoto are all legit NHLers.
Yep.
POJ has actually been pretty good in the limited NHL action.
Yep.
And then Vesalainen, Paling, Morgan Frost, Jake Ottinger's actually been pretty good. The only guy in the first round to not appear in the NHL yet, Shane Bowers. And then Yoki Haru and Kostin are and Tolvanen is still... People are still really excited about him.
Yeah.
And
not a ton of time there.
He has 10 goals this year, so
yep.
he's had a nice year. We'll see. There's still time. But point being, we talked about that class as an iffy one, and it's still iffy.
Yep.
Outside of those very tip-top couple of guys, it's still pretty iffy.
Solid in the middle of the first, but there's a bunch of not great also.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, we're going to get out of here. Thank you, everyone, watching, listening, consuming the podcast however you may. We appreciate it. Be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube, check us out. Of course, you can always listen to the audio format podcast as well if you prefer. Yeah, the Avs return Thursday would be their next game. They can practice on Wednesday if everything goes according to plan. So we'll be live tomorrow talking about something. We'll be live Wednesday talking about something. And then hopefully it's game day after that. Until
Hopefully.
next time, we'll talk to you all later.